Molly McLaren was the unfortunate victim of her ex-partner's murderous rage.
When the 23-year-old matched with Joshua Stimson on Tinder, she could never have imagined the horrific nightmare that would follow.
Molly McLaren was 23 years old and a student at the University of Kent.
In 2016, Molly met a man named Joshua Stimson on the dating app, Tinder. The pair didn't meet face-to-face until later that year in October, and they began dating shortly afterwards. However, in June 2018, Molly ended the relationship for good, and shortly after Stimson began harassing her online by posting derogatory messages and photos. McLaren had told friends in social media messages that she was scared of her ex-partner and went with her mother, Joanna, to North Kent Police Station. A police officer called Stimson and warned him to stop or face prosecution. He was spoken to by police for a second time just 2 days before murdering McLaren. 2 days before the murder, Stimson was caught on CCTV purchasing a knife from Asda in Chatham. Less than 30 minutes later, he also bought a pickaxe from Homebase. On June 29, 2018, Molly had been working out at the gym when she was approached by Stimson, who had been stalking her after they split 12 days before. The terrified student had confronted her ex and asked if he was following her before making her way back to her Citroën in Chatham Dockside Outlet Car Park. She texted her mom, Joanne, at 10:45 a.m. saying, "Mom, he's turned up at the gym and come next to me," before exchanging 20 messages with a pal about Stimson's behavior. The 23-year-old had no idea her killer was laying in wait with a bag containing the 2 knives and pickaxe he used to butcher her.
Once she was in the driver's seat, Stimson abandoned his vehicle, yanked open her door and launched a violent flurry of knife blows.
Molly tried to fight him off, screaming and beeping her horn, but she died within minutes. Stimson grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, but later lived in Woodham, near Rochester. The warehouse worker was 26 when he met Molly on Tinder, and the couple dated for 4 months in November 2016 before they briefly split. She finally ended the relationship for good on June 17, 2018, just 12 days before she died, but obsessed Stimson began posting derogatory comments and photos about the part-time barmaid on Facebook.
These included lies about her using cocaine, and he tagged people so that all her family could see.
Molly had told her mom before her death she had seen posts online from Stimson after they broke up which said there's more to come. The pair were so concerned they circulated photos of him to neighbors, and Molly reported the posts to police on June 22.
2 ex-girlfriends told the court previously how Stimson had stalked them after they split.
Alexandra Dale said he would follow her and take pictures of her and also send her a photo of her back garden and threatened to drown her on holiday. While Leah Hubbard said he spat drink all over her in a nightclub after they split, then waited outside for hours for her to leave. Police had also been warned twice to stay away from Molly and was last spoken to by cops on June 27 last year, 2 days before her death.
Kent Police reported itself to the Independent Police Complaints Commission after Molly's death.
Stimson was jailed for life with a minimum of 26 years, after jurors took less than 3 hours to convict him of murder. Stimson had admitted manslaughter with diminished responsibility on the basis of an abnormality of functioning arising from a mental condition at Maidstone Crown Court, but jurors rejected his plea. After her death, Molly's friends and family set up the Molly McLaren Foundation donation page, which raised thousands for charity. The charity will select groups that support people with eating disorders to distribute the money to. It will also raise awareness of eating disorders and the work charities do. A statement on the Just Giving page reads, "For those of you who are close to Molly, you will know that she battled with bulimia and subsequently anxiety, as a result of an eating disorder, for many years of her life. Instead of letting this beat her, she shared her own story in the hopes of empowering others around her. We want to create a legacy in her honor by channeling her passion and drive to create the most positive outcome possible through the creation of the Molly McLaren Foundation." Since her death, the foundation has hosted Molly Fest, a charity festival raising money for the Molly McLaren Foundation. On June 20, 2008, a jury found that Sheila LaBarre was sane when she murdered 2 boyfriends in Epping, New Hampshire. LaBarre admitted to killing Michael DeLogg and Kenneth County in 2005 and 2006, respectively, claiming God had made her an avenging angel, sent to earth to punish pedophiles.
In her mind, this included DeLogg and County, whose remains were found on her 115-acre farm.
There seemed to be no basis whatsoever in reality to any suggestion or any claim that her victims were pedophiles, engaged in pedophilia or were child abusers.
None whatsoever, Brad Bailey, a defense attorney who represented LaBarre, tells A&E True Crime.
And that, too, was something that informed the insanity defense I pursued at trial. The jury rejected LaBarre's plea, finding her guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentencing her to life in prison, where she remains today. At her trial in 2008, psychiatrist Dr. Roger Gray described LaBarre's childhood as populated with people who could use her however they wanted and wouldn't protect her, and populated with a real threat of death. He also testified that the painful memories likely contributed to her decisions as an adult. During Gray's testimony, LaBarre broke down and had to be escorted from the courtroom. Her childhood had been nightmarish. Michael Benson, who wrote a book about LaBarre's life, The Burn Farm, tells A&E True Crime. She was sexually and emotionally abused by her dad and his friends, facts corroborated by her older sister, who also endured the abuse. Born in Alabama in 1958, LaBarre graduated from Fort Payne High School in 1976 and had several unsuccessful marriages. She was admitted to a psychiatric facility in the early 1980s after attempting suicide. Ronnie Jennings, her husband at the time, claimed her mood swings often turned violent. Sheila's mood disorders were severe enough to cause her to be psychotic at times, but there was not enough evidence to show that mental illness caused Sheila to commit her future crimes, Benson says. LaBarre moved to Epping, New Hampshire in 1987, after she answered a personal ad placed by local chiropractor Wilfred Bill LaBarre. Although she never legally married Bill LaBarre, she took his last name and lived with him until he died in 2000.
Claiming she was Bill LaBarre's common-law wife, LaBarre later inherited his entire estate, including the farm, despite objections from the deceased's children.
When LaBarre was young, she swallowed a bottle of pills, slid into a car and drove until she passed out at the wheel and crashed, says Benson.
She was rushed to a hospital and spent more than a week in a coma.
When she awoke, she claimed that she had died and found herself seated at a table with various men who all had long beards.
LaBarre insisted one of the men was God.
She was told, by God, that her work on earth was not through and returned to her life under orders to kill pedophiles, to kill perverts like the men who had hurt her when she was little, Benson says. After she lured DeLog and County, a young man with a learning disability whom LaBarre met via a personal ad, to her farm, she subjected the men to physical and mental abuse.
Prior to County's death, 2 police officers recalled seeing him in a wheelchair inside a local Walmart, covered in bruises and burns.
Sheila taped the audio of her torture sessions, tapes she could listen to after the victim was ashes and bones on the lawn, sessions in which she would force her victims to admit they were pedophiles, says Benson. Several days after the Walmart sighting, LaBarre made a bizarre phone call to Epping police in which she played audio of County confessing to being a pedophile. When police conducted a welfare check, they noticed a burn pile containing what looked like a large, fleshy human bone, bone fragments, and a pair of sneakers.
A search warrant was issued, and authorities arrested LaBarre on April 2, 2006, after she attempted to flee.
Even after human remains had been found on her property, LaBarre was left alone to destroy evidence while the cops went to get a search warrant, says Benson. By the time they got back, the most impressive human bone and the victim's sneakers were nowhere to be found. Police conducted a 3-week search of LaBarre's farm, during which they discovered an incinerated mattress, human bones and blood splatter in various locations throughout the house.
LaBarre admitted to stabbing County to death before burning his body.
She also confessed to killing DeLog and burning his body, but it is unknown how he died. At the time that I represented her, I would describe Sheila as a severely mentally ill individual, says Bailey. Both our mental health experts were in agreement that Sheila was suffering from a substantial mental health disease or defect, such that she could not conform her behavior to the conduct of the law, or appreciate the difference between right and wrong, which is the standard in many states for an insanity defense. Based on observations and conversations with LaBarre, including multiple psychiatric evaluations, her defense team deemed there was viable ground to argue a lack of criminal responsibility, as defined by New Hampshire law, even though she admitted to 2 homicides. This is called not guilty by reason of insanity in other states. Also unique in New Hampshire, the burden of proving that someone is insane or not criminally responsible is on the defense. In many other states, such as Massachusetts where my home practice is based, it's different in that once it's raised by the defense, the burden is on the prosecution to prove that somebody isn't faking, says Bailey. So, I had the very unusual experience of putting evidence in front of the jury that established how severely mentally ill Sheila was. Among the evidence, Bailey and his team described an incident where LaBarre took a hatchet and hacked into a trailer where her boyfriend at the time was sleeping. They also detailed her taking a revolver and firing shots at another boyfriend as he ran through a field. And they brought in witnesses who testified they saw LaBarre order her victims into the trunk of her car and believe she kept the men in cages on her property. In June 2002, the jury rejected the defense, finding LaBarre guilty of first-degree murder. While it's difficult to speculate what forms a jury's basis of opinion, Bailey believes that even if the jury understood lack of criminal responsibility, they likely considered LaBarre a future risk to society. In their minds, they might have thought Sheila was too dangerous and that she might one day get out if she was placed in a mental health facility.
LaBarre admitted to and was convicted of 2 homicides, which meets the FBI's current definition of a serial killer.
While conducting a search of the LaBarre property in 2006, investigators also discovered 3 human toes near the farm. A forensic analysis determined the remains did not belong to either County or DeLog, and a DNA match has not yet surfaced.
There has also been speculation that LaBarre killed Bill LaBarre, an allegation she denies.
LaBarre is currently serving life in prison without the possibility of parole at the New Hampshire Correctional Facility for Women in Concord, New Hampshire.
Police in Indiana have revealed a cold case murder dating back to 1980 appears to have been solved after a tipster came forward to say they knew who killed the teenage victim. Shelley Ann Werner was 15 years old the last time she was seen alive at Wolt's grocery store in Mishawaka on June 15, 1980.
10 days later, her body was found, partially clothed with a gunshot wound to her head, near an abandoned set of train tracks on Madison Road. Despite interviewing nearly 150 people in the initial years of the case, police did not identify any suspects as Werner's disappearance made regional and national headlines. On Wednesday, after 43 years, cold case investigators now believe they've solved Werner's murder. Based on information provided by a key witness, cold case investigators with the Mishawaka Police Department say they've identified 3 men who were involved in Werner's abduction and murder. The men are all now deceased, so no criminal charges will be filed, but police hope the knowledge of who the perpetrators likely were brings closure to Werner's family and the community. The fact that these subjects were deceased didn't change a thing.
"We wanted to get the closure to the family," said James Campbell, a former South Bend police detective who now volunteers on cold cases in Mishawaka.
Officials did not identify the suspects since they are deceased, but detectives said they were all around 5 to 10 years older than Werner, and that she would have known them, but wasn't friends with them. Investigators struggled for years with no conclusive DNA evidence to go on. That changed, detectives said, a few years ago when a key witness came forward with information about Werner's disappearance. Campbell, who worked the case along with David Doseman, Tim Corbett, Sam Walsh and Donna Newcomer, said the witness was a woman who was intimidated by the suspects, and only when 2 of them died did she feel comfortable talking to police. The reason some of these things take so long is the fear and threats these suspects put towards witnesses, Campbell said. They threaten them and their families, and that's exactly what happened in this case. Investigators then set up to corroborate the leads from the witness and found the 3rd suspect had also died in 2018. The case was first looked at by the St. Joseph County Metro Homicide Unit, but then moved to the Mishawaka Police Department's cold case team when the homicide unit disbanded in late 2021. The announcement marks an end to the 43-year-old homicide, though Mishawaka's cold case unit is currently looking into 7 other unsolved murder cases and asks anyone with information to contact law enforcement. After 16-year-old Emma Walker broke up with her boyfriend Riley Gall, he eventually grew enraged enough to kill her, then posted a message on Twitter to cover his tracks. In 2016, 16-year-old Emma Walker seemed to be living her teenage dream. She was a cheerleader at Central High School in Knoxville, Tennessee. She was surrounded by loving friends, and she was even dating a boy on the football team. But that fall, everything came crashing down when she broke up with 18-year-old Riley Gall, and he killed her because of it. Gall and Walker had started dating 2 years prior when Gall was a junior and Walker was a freshman. As their relationship progressed, however, Walker's friends and family noticed that Gall was becoming more controlling. Not long after Gall started college in 2016,
Walker decided to end their relationship, but Gall didn't take it well. He took drastic measures to get Walker's attention, including faking his own kidnapping. Then, in the early morning hours of November 21, 2016, Gall crept up outside of Walker's house and fired 2 shots through the wall of her bedroom. Her mother found her dead the next morning, and she immediately told investigators that she suspected Gall. However, it wasn't until 2 of Gall's friends helped the police carry out a sting operation that the unhinged ex-boyfriend was brought to justice. Riley Gall, a wide receiver on the Central High School football team, first caught Emma Walker's eye when she started cheering during her freshman year. He wasn't a classic jock but a funny, intelligent young man who loved playing video games and had a nerdy side. Mark and Jill Walker, Emma's parents, thought he was a great fit for their daughter at first. Jill said he was very likable, and Mark recalled that he was a very nice-looking young man, well-mannered. But Walker's friends and family soon began to realize that Gall had a controlling side. Lauren Hutton, one of Walker's classmates, said, "He got more possessive and more clingy toward her and wouldn't let her do certain things." Over the 2 years they dated, Gall and Walker frequently broke up and got back together, often having really dramatic fights. At one point, Gall sent her Snapchat messages that read, "I hate you, I hate everything about you, and you're dead to me. I'll check the obituary. F you." When Walker's parents saw these messages, they immediately banned Gall from their home and took their daughter's cell phone away, but Gall gave her an iPod Touch so they could still stay in contact. Finally, around Halloween of 2016, Walker ended things with Gall for good. Mark Walker noted, "She did become like her old self again. She would come out of her room, eat dinner with us, and socialize with us." Tragically, Emma Walker would only be able to enjoy her newfound freedom for a few short weeks before Gall snatched it from her forever. On November 18, 2016, just a few weeks after breaking up with Gall, Emma Walker attended a party at her friend's house. According to the Knoxville News Sentinel, around 11:30 p.m. she received a text message from an anonymous number that read, "Go to your car with your keys. Go alone, I've got someone you love. If you don't comply, I will hurt them." Walker suspected the texts were from her ex, so she and a group of her friends walked outside and found Riley Gall lying face down in a ditch. He claimed he'd been kidnapped and couldn't remember anything because his captives had hit him in the head, but Walker didn't believe him and walked away. The very next day, Walker saw an eerie stranger dressed in black outside her house. News reports that she texted her friends, "I'm home alone and somebody in all black walked down my street and came to my door and rang the doorbell over and over again. I thought I was going to die." Terrified, she reached out to the only person she could think of at the moment, Riley Gall. She told him, "I hate you but I need you right now," and he replied, "I'm coming, I'm speeding, just give me a minute." When Walker's mother arrived home shortly thereafter and saw her daughter outside with Gall, she was livid. She asked him to leave and told Walker that the stranger in black had probably been Gall all along. The next day, Sunday, November 20th, Walker's parents followed her to work and back home to ensure that she was safe. Around 12 a.m., she went to bed, and that was the last time they saw her alive. At 6 a.m. on Monday, November 21, 2016, Jill Walker went into her daughter's room to wake her up for school and found her unresponsive. She immediately called the police, who rushed to the home to investigate. At first, they believed Walker may have taken her own life, but then they spotted a strange hole in her bedroom wall. Knox County Sheriff's Deputy Nikki Buells recalled to ABC News, "There was a hole in the wall, it appeared to be a bullet hole. At that point, I knew that it probably was not a suicide." Further investigation revealed a second hole in the wall and 2 bullet casings in the yard outside. There was just a small amount of blood on Walker's pillow, but it was clear that she'd been fatally shot behind her left ear. Another officer on the case, Lieutenant Alan Merritt, started interviewing friends and family members, and noted that the same name came up over and over again. "Everybody kept giving us the name Riley Gall because of their relationship, because they had seen the way that Riley had treated her, the way he'd talked to her," Merritt said. Meanwhile, Gall was busy crafting posts on Facebook and Twitter about Walker's death. "Rest easy now, sweetheart," he wrote in one tweet. "I love you forever and always." Despite Gall's mournful messages, investigators quickly brought him in for questioning about Emma Walker's death. Detective James Hurst told ABC News, "When I first met him, I thought he might have been a grieving boyfriend. When we got into the interview room and sat down, I felt like there was a dark side. He didn't have a whole lot of passion or concern. Gall told police that Walker had blocked his number the night of her death after they had yet another argument over the phone, and he'd cried in his car for 2 or 3 hours before going to bed. The whole time, however, he never referred to Emma Walker by her name, referring to her only as the girl. Although the interview was suspicious, police had no solid evidence they could use to charge Gall with Walker's murder, until 2 of his close friends came forward to help. 2 of Riley Gall's friends from college, Alex McCarty and Noah Walton, quickly told investigators that Gall had displayed some concerning actions since his breakup with Walker. Soon after the relationship ended, Gall had taken a handful of Vicodin and washed it down with alcohol in an apparent suicide attempt. On Saturday, November 19th, the day after Gall's supposed kidnapping, he'd told McCarty that he'd stolen his grandfather's gun in order to protect himself. He then asked Walton how to get fingerprints off of a gun, and he eventually asked both of his friends to help him dispose of the weapon. According to reports, Gall swore to his friends that he hadn't killed Walker, but he wanted to toss the gun into the Tennessee River because he was worried the police would unfairly connect him to the crime if they learned he had it. Suspicious of Gall's true motives, McCarty and Walton teamed up with investigators to reveal the truth. They were fitted with cameras and microphones as they accompanied Gall to dump the gun that he'd used to kill Walker. Thanks to McCarty and Walton, the police swooped in just in time to find Gall in possession of the murder weapon, gloves, and black clothing, the same kind Walker had seen the stranger outside her house wearing. At his trial, Riley Gall was found guilty of first-degree murder, stalking, theft, reckless endangerment, and possession of a firearm during a felony, earning him an automatic life sentence. To the end, though, he maintained that he never meant to harm Emma Walker. "I wanted to scare her," Gall told Walker's family at his sentencing hearing. "I never meant to take Emma's life." More than a decade after the death of Kevin Drinks, 4 men have been convicted for his murder in what prosecutors say was a case of mistaken identity. Drinks was killed in 2011 after being mistaken for a witness expected to testify in a criminal case. Chad Reynolds, Michael Blackston, Samaj Armstead and Rashawn Combs were all found guilty of murder, conspiracy, and related charges in the December 10, 2011 killing. On Monday morning, Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner spoke near the spot where Drinks was killed near Broad Street and Girard Avenue in North Philadelphia. Krasner said Drinks was under surveillance for a full day after he was improperly believed to be the person testifying in a Philadelphia trial, even though he had nothing to do with the case. He was killed in a killing of mistaken identity. There was an assassination of the person they believed to be a witness for the purpose of silencing that witness, Krasner said. Drinks was mistaken as a witness in the murder of Kristen Freeman, which was what the killers thought when they pulled the trigger. The case went unsolved until 2017, when a Philadelphia police detective was investigating a separate case and listening to coded conversations from the prison, which implicated 4 people in the killing of Drinks. What they were discussing over and over again was the description of the witness, where he works, what kind of car he drives, and formulating a plot to kill him, said Assistant DA Ashley Toxilowski. That plot came to fruition in December. Keena Drinks, Kevin's widow, admitted it was tough waiting and watching the case progress. Kevin Drinks was a hard-working innocent citizen shot and killed on the streets of Philadelphia through gun violence, mistaken identity, she said. "First you cry, then you want to know why." Keena Drinks praised the DAs assigned to the case, who she said cared about the loss of her husband in a senseless act of violence. She said over the years it was difficult believing that her husband's killers would be found and convicted. "I did lose a little bit of faith, but I still fought to find out what happened. I lost a little bit of faith in the police system and the justice system." Drinks urged other people in similar situations to press police and prosecutors about their cold cases because they can be solved. She admitted she was annoying to police at times, but added that police gave her the respect to call her when they made the arrests. Drinks said she will now become an advocate for victims of crime and help others suffering the same fate as she did, as an example of how cold cases can be solved. Drinks and her friends and relatives removed pins they wore for a decade to remember the homicide. They didn't need them anymore, they said, because justice has been done in the case. Reynolds, Blackston, and Armstead have all been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Combs, who was convicted of third-degree murder, likely faces at least 30 years behind bars. His sentencing is scheduled for June 29th. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, and click the bell icon to stay tuned.